ब्रह्म समाज, आर्य समाज, प्रार्थना समाज, all of them were trying to see modern values in Vedas. They are surely trying to glorify, they are trying to take pride in them. So they are critical of social evils at that time in the context of caste as well as woman, but they won't blame Vedas for these evils, because to blame Vedas is to blame Hinduism. To blame Hinduism is to blame India's past, India's identity. Okay. But one man refused this game and said things very, very boldly. Okay. And to him, the evils can be traced to Vedas. Veda evils can be traced to Vedas, which means Vedas themselves are contributing to the evils. Okay, so this is the position of Ambedkar, Ramabai, but the first person who took this position was Phule. Ambedkar called him one of his gurus. And Phule was doing it with a historical evidence. The evidence that we got just around that time. The evidence related to Aryans and where they came from. Okay. So, and another thing is, the kind of a theory he developed in this context is closer to what Marx said, which would come under historical materialism. So, Phule was very much ahead of his times. Okay. Now let us discuss Jotirao Phule. Belonged to this period. He was born in a caste of gardeners called Mali, and his father was a contractor. The context of his time was that Pest was left, and British came, and Christian missionaries came, and Britishers gave certain new economic activities, including contracting, building, and his father was a successful contractor, and Phule himself was a successful businessman. And Phule attended a local Scottish mission high school. Okay. And he became conscious of caste, and he started thinking radically. When he attended his Brahmin friend's wedding, he was insulted. So they were close friends, and his friend's relatives objected to this boy coming to the wedding, and that is an impure person attending one ceremony. So Phule was hurt, and around that time he read Thomas Paine's Rights of Man, and it impacted him. And he finished his education in 1848, and the same year he started a school for Sudra and Atisutra along with his wife, whom he taught reading and writing. His wife was Savitri Bai. Okay. And as his school was opposed by the upper caste people of his village, his father asked him to leave home or stop these activities. And Phule left home. But after he left, with the support of his friends and others, he started schools again. And in 1852, there were 3 schools with 273 girls. But they are all closed by 1858 due to lack of funds. Funds got affected because of 1857 revolt. And he generated so much of opposition that attempt on his life was made in 1856. Okay. But the British government treated him well, and he was a member of Pune Municipal Council between 1876 and 1882. Okay. And he wrote included Gulamgiri, slavery, in 1873. This became a foundation or a framework for the organization he founded in 1873 with the name Satya Sodak Samaj. Unlike other organizations around that time, this is founded by a lower caste person, that is Shudra. And he wrote Shetkari Asud in 1881, published in 1881, and the book he wrote in the fag end of his life was published soon after his death, and in 1891. That is the Sarvajanik Satya Dharma Pustak, the book of the true faith. Okay. We are going to discuss briefly this particular book, Slavery. Okay. Slavery makes use of Aryan migration theory. recent researchers have demonstrated beyond a shadow of doubt that the Brahmins were not the aborigines of India. Okay. His reference to Aryan migration theory. And the original inhabitants with whom the Brahmins fought were not inappropriately termed Rakshasas. Rakshasas, which is these Rakshaks, means that is the protectors of the land. They eventually succeeded in establishing their supremacy and subjugating the aborigines to their entire control. And accounts of this conquest, enveloped with a mass of incredible fiction, are bound in the books of Brahmins. Okay, so he was saying Aryans came and natives defeated, subordinated, and as a way of subordination they created Hinduism. They wrote scriptures. So how true is this? This is very, very much valid. Okay. And incidentally, this is also what is historical materialism. That is, material conditions give rise to other aspects of culture, including religion. This is what Marx said. And religion is used to dominate. This is the second aspect of Marxism. So Phule, without knowing Marxism, Marx was Phule's contemporary, was using Marxism to explain how Hinduism evolved. Okay. So this shows how advanced he was. Okay. And then he says the Aryans devised that weird system of mythology, that ordination of caste, and the code of cruel and inhuman laws to which we can find no parallel among the other nations. So, racial differences gave rise to caste differences, okay, and that gave rise to Hinduism. So, race to caste, caste to Hinduism. Perfectly valid theory. Okay. And then Phule wanted to undo this kind of glorification in the name of religion, certain Puranas. So he tried to provide counter narratives. For example, he said, if Brahma has four faces, he must have had 8 breasts, 4 genitals and 4 anuses. So writing irreverential to make fun of the so-called Sanskrit sacred things. And on Parashurama he wrote, Parashurama was a bully, vicious and barbarous villain. And he glorified Bali, whom Vamana eliminated. So he called him Bali Raja. Okay. So these are the things he did. And he wrote against Brahmins. See what he wrote on cow. Brahmins think of cow piss as sacred. They drink cow piss and purify themselves. And the same Bhatts and Brahmins think of Shudra farmer as low. And Atisudras are untouchables. So he is suggesting that cow piss is more sacred than human being. And please note, this is not because Hinduism is violated. Hinduism is not because Hinduism is not being followed or distorted. This is what Hinduism is. It is Hinduism to say that cow piss is sacred than a human being. It is not a distortion. Okay. So Phule's main concern at that time is Brahminical colonialism and not British colonialism. So he didn't believe that India should be independent or anything like that. So he asked, why should, for example, how will the farmers and Brahmins unite against the British? Okay. So Phule was very much concerned about Shudras, who are currently called OBCs, and Atisudras, who are currently called Dalits or scheduled castes. And the word Dalit was introduced by Phule only. And he opened his well in his house for the use of other castes. Okay. What did he think of the British? Didn't he understand the nature of colonialism? He didn't understand the nature of British rule. He understood. For example, in Shet Karya Asud, he clearly stated that the peasants' plight worsened during the British rule. And he also knew they won't stay forever. For example, he wrote, the English are here today, but who knows whether they will be here tomorrow. They won't be there till eternity. So, therefore, all the Shudras should make haste to free themselves from the ancestral slavery of these birds. So, Phule's concern is how to protect Sudras and Atisudras from Brahmins, not how to protect India from the British. So Phule's writings show what kind of contradictions are there in Indian society, what kind of conflicts are there, and what is the true nature of Hinduism. And then Phule believed to rectify these problems, education is the way. Okay. Because Arya Brahmins have kept them ignorant for their own selfish purposes, the farmers don't have the power of balanced thought. He is referring to Shudras here. So, and Shudras are kept ignorant by the Brahmins and for their selfish reasons. So, how do you undo this domination? Education. And the education, he wanted mass education. The greater portion of the revenue of the empire are derived from the rights labor. That the government should expend profusely a large portion of revenue thus raised on the education of the higher classes for it is there only who take for it is these only who take advantage of it is anything but just or equitable. So the government spending money on education of higher classes, which at that time people like Ranade were asking, Phule thinks is not right. It should be focus should be on primary education. He was for massive expansion of primary education. Higher education will only benefit the Brahmins, whereas public education, primary education will benefit the lower castes. That was Phule's point. He appeared before Hunter Commission in 1882 and he made these proposals for expansion of primary education and also more attention to the students from lower castes and teachers themselves should come from the lower castes. Okay. And his concern was extended to gender issues also. And he looked at the gender the same way he looked at the caste. Women are victims of Brahminic culture and power in common with other lower caste and untouchable people. So, woman, Sudra and Adsudra, they are all victims of upper caste. So, it shows to whom is Hinduism benefiting? Very few people. And women are denied education to keep them ignorant, the same way lower castes were denied education. It is denial of education. And among the women, Brahmin women were the worst sufferers. He ran a home for pregnant Brahmin widows. There used to be many widows. Girls used to get married at a very early age. And when they become widows, their presence itself becomes inauspicious. And the heads will be shaved. And they have to they will have very restricted movement. But then they are also vulnerable for sexual exploitation by the relatives and others. And so they get unwanted pregnancies and they don't know what to do with the children. So he was asking, he gave pamphlets, widows, come here and deliver your baby safely and secretly. It is up to your discretion to whether you want to keep the baby in the center or take it with you. Okay. Nobody has done thing like this. He advocated remarriage and he was against shaving of heads of the widows. And Phule himself adopted one boy delivered by a widow. So he took gender as one dimension of stratification and exploitation, and he held sacred scriptures are responsible for this. And then in the book he wrote at the fag end of his life, and which was published in 1891. Okay. Look at what he wrote. Muslims were sent by God to India to rescue people from caste-based slavery. Say, who said such a nice thing about Muslims? So Muslims were sent by God to deliver freedom to the enslaved people of India. But what happened? They soon immersed themselves in luxury and betrayed the God. Then God deprived them of their power, civilized the English primitives, granted them valor, and sent them to rescue the Shudras and Ashudras from the Aryan Brahmins. And some Englishmen were sincerely doing this work. So look at the way he looked at Muslim rule, British rule. How did moderates and extremists looked at this? Muslim rule as a curse, and British rule, okay, something good, something bad. But essentially, there was some dispute. But Phule was very, very clear. This was supposed to be great, but it failed. But this is really good. But it doesn't mean he doesn't know the nature of colonialism. But it is just that he thinks that the caste and gender issues are more important than colonialism or colonialism as exploitation. So, Phule provides an interesting outlook on the nature of Indian society, which we should reflect.